And all of a sudden, the corner of my eye, I feel something staring at me. I turn and look, and there is about a foot tall little man with a beard, with a red hat, but the red hat's not pointed up, it's down. Okay. And he's got these blue clothing on, but this big, bushy, gray white beard. Looks up at me, and I scream. I'm freaked out because what I'm just seeing should not exist. It should just be a myth or a legend. And I scream, and Dave's like, what's wrong? I said, I just saw, you're not going to believe what I saw. And I told him, he starts laughing. I said, Dave, I swear I just saw this. And I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. How in my house? What's going on? Right. Well, later that week, I went to go visit my mom that lives out in the countryside. And I was telling her about what I saw. She's like, really? Because we've always had experiences growing up and we share our stories. She goes, well, I wonder if I have them here. I go, Mom, I don't know. I'm not familiar with them. I don't know what the heck what they do, this and that. I've had other experiences with elementals. So she takes her electric wheelchair, goes down the hall on the other side of the house. And as she's coming back, she starts screaming, Chris, knock it off. And I'm like, what? And I'm on my laptop in the den. I go, what are you talking about? She's like, that's not funny. I go, what's not funny? And she comes and realizes I'm sitting on the floor. Wait a minute, you weren't playing a trick on me? She was like, no. I said, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I go, what? She goes, going down the hallway. And all of a sudden I hear this hut, 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 hut. And I'm like, what? She goes, I swear. She was like, oh my God, and that wasn't you. I go, no. I said, I start laughing, going, oh my God. What does that sound like? That sounds like something from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. The dwarfs are going like, hi ho, it's off to work. But they're going, hut, 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 hut. Like they're like telling my mom, hurry up, let's go. Come on, let's go. Right. And I'm sitting there going, oh my God, they just made their presence known to my mom. I said, Mom, this is just so crazy. I go, Mom, you swear? She was like, I swear. And I'm like, you just asked. I wonder if I have them. So they made themselves known.
In the air, by the sea, from the land, and within you and me, fairies are whispering. Have you been coloured, confused, completely captivated, and craving clarity? This is Claire Casely, and I am a fairy whisperer.
Maybe you could use some clarity, some guidance.
To catch a whisper, you have to listen closely. Listen with me. Hello dear listeners, and welcome to the Fairy Whispering podcast. I'm your host, Claire Casely. I always love to hear from my listeners, so if you've got any thoughts about this episode, the podcast, or if you'd like to be a guest, you can contact me, Claire at fairywhisperer.co.uk, on Instagram at fairywhisperer, on Twitter at fairywhispering. And I also have a Facebook community called Fairy Whispering. See you in one of these places, I hope. Always believe in magic. Wisdom begins in wonder. And when you start to wonder about things, you start to learn. This is very true of my guest for this episode, Chris Fleming. Chris is a world-renowned medium, paranormal investigator, and talented artist. He shares some of his many encounters he has had with elementals whilst investigating the paranormal for TV shows, Help My House is Haunted, Spooked Scotland, and other shows. The elementals that Chris has had interactions with include pixies, gnomes, imps, goblins, satyrs, and elves. I knew I had to invite him on the podcast to talk about it and his other experiences. See links in the episode description and more info in the show notes on my podcast blog. Hello everyone, welcome to the Fairy Whispering podcast. And I'm really thrilled today to have Chris Fleming as my guest on the podcast. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks for having me, Claire. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and the reason I wanted to have you on the podcast today was because you've also had some fairy experiences.
Correct.
I'd like to know when your connection with pixies and fairies of all kinds began.
It's a difficult one to answer because I reflect back on experience that I had when I was a little kid that I did not have an answer. It was unknown to me, which I'll get to in a second. I've always been fascinated because I've seen ghosts. I've seen various types of entities. I've had extraterrestrial encounters throughout my childhood into my adulthood, and I continue to have experiences, obviously. And then in 2010, I left the mortgage industry, which I'd been in for 13 years. And prior to that, I was a graphic designer, an artist, and art director. I left the business because even though it was very lucrative and it was very, very well respected, and I had a lot of great connections in the industry, my passion was for the paranormal. And the reason being is because I still had some questions about experiences in my life, but I felt because of my experiences, I could, be a voice for this type of phenomenon. Well, in dealing with fairies, I've always been interested in the elemental aspect. And of course, we take a look at the sisters and Arthur Conan Doyle, where they committed fraud. I always found that fascinating. The fact that they alleged that they saw these things. And I remember growing up when I was going to the library with my mom, because my mom was a bookworm. She would read a book a night. And when I would have paranormal experiences, she would take me with her and take me down the aisle where there's the paranormal books. And I would just spend all day going through the books, looking at pictures and trying to find answers to the stuff going on in our house. Now, this was in grade school. So I was anywhere between, 7, 8 years old. And I remember we'd leave the library and I'd have a big stack of books, and you couldn't even see my face because I just wanted to take them all home. Mm-hmm. And so I remember going through some of the books and seeing these, famous photographs, which we know are fake, of the sisters with these cutouts. But at the time, it was like, oh my God, fairies are real. I don't. And then I had heard, and I was like, wow, so does that mean they don't exist at all because they faked it? Or is this just this one particular incident they faked it? So it was always in the back of my mind. Mm-hmm. When ghost hunters went to Ireland and they had an elemental experience, I had a long talk with Grant about that, where I would love to go to the UK and try to investigate this type of phenomenon. Obviously, I had that opportunity with Help My House is Haunted. And it was the very first season, the very first episode, we went to the Dolphin House. And that is where the woman had all these Ouija boards. She had 16 Ouija boards. They were having stuff happen to patrons, and they caught something on their CCTV camera, which was extraordinary because you see this silhouette of this entity go back and forth based on the shoulders and everything. I knew right away, God, that's very similar to an imp. It's like some type of gargoyle troll. Well, obviously, we came in contact with them because we caught them on our EVP and ITC. And then the next night, when we had left and gone to another hotel, I was abruptly woken up in the morning by this gray, bulky musculature, almost toad-like, with these warts and stuff on its skin at the edge of my bed. And it was coming out of this black mass. And as I woke up, what's interesting, I must have known about this in the astral plane or in my dream state, because I shot right back in my body, jumped up already knowing that it was there, even though I was completely asleep. And I lunged at it and says, you don't have permission. Startled, it shot back into this black cloud and took off. And I realized, oh my God, that's so different than the type of creatures I saw, but it's obvious it goes in the same category because we caught on audio them saying imps, and they came in through the Ouija board. So I realized more that these types of creatures, these entities, were part of the elemental realm, but they were of the darker part. And I was fascinated and came to the conclusion from that experience that there are various species of these gargoyle type impish creatures that exist in America and other parts of the world. There's slight variations, no different than the species of animals we have today, amphibians, birds, and everything. So I was fascinated by, what, we've been narrow-minded thinking it's either this or it's that. They look like this, they look like that, but there are variations. And that's one thing that I started to realize that I felt was very compelling. Well, when we went to the second season to the Devon house, which was the farmhouse, I had walked through the place and I was sensing children and everything, which made sense because there was a old school that was next door with children. But then I started also sensing there was some type of imps there because something got thrown at us, which you don't see in the show. We don't know what it was. It got thrown right at us when we were on the second floor. And I felt there was something in one part of the room. We also saw a black mass that shot underneath the floor, just missed getting it on camera. And I was like, wow, well, that's dark stuff. And plus they've seen this black mass. So I'm thinking there's going to be some imp type creatures there, which there were in coinciding with the pixies. So
yes, I remember that.
yeah, I go into the room and I said, okay, there's something else here besides them, but I'm unfamiliar with what this is. What is this? And on my recorder, it clearly says Wudgie. And I'm like, a Wudgie? And I'm like, well, the only familiarity I have with Wudgie is the Puck Wudgie, which is known about in the East Coast of the United States.
Yeah.
There's many myths, legends, and stories about these type of little troll-like creatures. So this is very similar to a Wudgie. Okay. So what would you call it here in the UK? And this response comes out in the recorder. I wasn't familiar with what it was saying. I didn't know what it was saying. But I knew there was something there. So I played it for Barry Guy, and Barry's like, Chris, it's saying pixie. And I play it back. Oh my God, it is. Like, what the hell's a pixie? And he tells me it's an elemental. And I'm like, holy cow. So they were trying to say it's very similar to what you have in America called the Wudgie, but here we call it pixie. And from there, I realized, okay, then we're dealing with some type of elemental. Now, I had previously picked up there was something going on in the garden right near this white statue of this goose or this duck that I was getting the impression on the way there. So I realized there has to be something out there that is related to this because I know my abilities. I know when I get this message of like, hey, this is the connecting factor. This is the trigger that is causing this type of activity. And I love when that happens because then we pursue that. So we find out, of course, there is a cherry tree or apple tree, whatever it was, that was cut down 10 feet away from that statue, which is why the elementals were upset because it's been there for a long period of time. So as the investigation pursues, we start investigating and Barry and Jane capture 3 stick figures, short stick figures simultaneously, which is the first time I've ever seen on the SLS, the digital dowsing SLS, 3 anomalies at the same time. I've never seen that. And they all came out of the wall or the mirrors, and they were the same size as what we would assume these pixies were. Well, when we were upstairs, I was with one of the cameramen. I said, I know you're here. I can feel you. I can sense you. I'm getting bits and pieces of your voices on my recorder. I need to see you. I need to know what you look like so I can put the name to the visual. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting right near the leather couch in the one bedroom, and all of a sudden, boom, you hear something jump on the leather couch. We turn and look, and there's nothing there. The cameraman's like, what the? Because he heard it too. I go, what did it sound like? It sounded like a small animal or a dog just jumped on the couch. So I'm realizing, okay, we understand you're right there. I can feel you. I can't see you because you're outside my visual. You're outside my visual spectrum, which is 10% electromagnetic field. We only see. This is scientific fact. So that means you must be somewhere in the 90%. Allow me to see you. My brain frequency, my eyes can't see you because it's restricted to that visual spectrum. Allow me to see what you look like. All of a sudden, this like little mist in this like cloud, it was the weirdest thing, like something coming right out of a fog, starts to appear. And I see this elemental on the couch. And I'm like, oh my God. And it's just there, like kind of like reaching out with its hand. And I did a drawing of it.
Yeah.
This is the drawing of what I saw.
Oh, like that.
And it had that brown reddish color. But what's interesting about it, as you see, is it has like these like quills, like these porcupine quills that are coming out of the arms and the back of the head and the neck. But also it had a very like insect type body to it.
Right. Is that like hair?
So it was part insect and part like fairy. You know what I mean?
Ah, right. Do you think that was part of it communicating part of its message? Because I've just got this theory. I don't know if it's right.
Well, for me, it just appeared, so now I know what it looked like. So I made a promise to them, I'm going to talk to the owner, and we discussed ways for them to have this relationship, to where they get along. And the owner of the property, obviously you see it in the show, the Help My House Owner, but actually He just reached out to me a couple of weeks ago. He wants to buy the drawing because he said they've done some amazing work to the garden, which they believe the elementals are excited about and happy about. And he says he's had no negative experiences since we've been there. And he says he's had some experiences and felt some stuff. So he's got this wonderful, beautiful, supernatural relationship with these things. Well, what happened, because we established this contact, and we were blown away. And I know that Jane and Barry were a little up like, people might have to believe this. I go, listen, don't worry about the criticism in this and that. We are paranormal investigators, and we're here to report our findings. No different than science when they make a new discovery and other scientists attack them and they try to scientific method to research it and try to redo it, to either debunk it or to validate it. The fact of the matter is we have to report our findings, and our findings are definitely on the recorder. What I saw, what you guys caught in the SLS, is that there are elementals here, and this is behind the haunting. And I came to the understanding that, a lot of hauntings that happen, they're not all by ghosts or negative entities, that, a lot of them are actually by elementals. Yeah. So what's interesting about this, because because as humans, and we know through many decades and centuries, the elementals weren't always treated very well. They were hunted, they were stalked a long time ago. When you talk about the fallen, and because of religious beliefs and paganism and everything, that people would hunt them down or kick them out because they felt they were evil. So because we had this respect for them, and, listen, I was blown away, because to me it was exciting. It was a brand new experience. And I'm like, oh my God, this is a new entity that I've now made contact with. And we have the proof. So for me, I was so excited about it, a little overexcited, but I was like, this is fascinating.
I was excited to watch it because I was like, wow, a paranormal program that's talking about fairies, which is great.
Yeah, well, it's, the elemental realm with these pixies. And what's interesting is then we had, like 8 other locations to go to, 7, 6, whatever it was. They were showing up almost at every location when we were doing EVP outside. They're saying, it's us, the pixies. And I'm like, Barry's like, Chris, they're telling us pixies. And I was getting it too. And for me, it was amazing. Like, we went to Calverton. I saw all of them in the forest. I don't know if you see this in the show, but I see all of them right there. I say all of, I see in my mind's eye, and I can sense them. And when I took out my recorder, I go, who's here with us? And it goes, pixies. Like, they all sang it, right? Well, when we were up in the mountain at nighttime, we came in contact with Roman soldiers. We came in contact with pixies, and we heard the Romans marching. We're like, what the hell is that sound? Where's it coming from? We heard them yelling from a stronghold. None of that's in the show, which I was really upset about, because it was just remarkable. We all heard it. But I have, who else is here with us? And it says Pixie. And I go, well, where are you? I can't see you, because I play on my recorder. And it says, I'm right here. I'm a flower. And it says, I'm a flower.
Oh, wow.
When I analyzed, and it's clear as day, I've got the EVP.
Yeah.
And I believe I may have played it on one of my podcasts with Kate Ray, where it says I'm a flower. It hit me. A flower. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. I go back to my childhood when I was 5 years old. Okay. We had lived for a couple years in this brand new house in a subdivision that's in a valley. There was all this forest around, and then farther away, they started developing areas for new subdivisions. Well, I was out across the street at the park, and there were some older kids, maybe about 12, 13. They said, hey, follow us. So I followed them through the forest, away from my house. And next thing you know, they took off running and left me there. And I was like, I had no idea where I was. I'd never been that far away from the house, through a forest. And now I'm in this area that I'm not familiar with. And it was during the middle of the day, and the sun was beating down, clear skies. And all there was like this dirt road, and there was roped off surveyed plots of land where they were going to start digging for homes. But it was still all dandelions, flowers, and fields. But there was ropes in certain areas around it. And I'm looking, and now I'm crying, because I don't know where I'm at. I don't know which way to go, left, right. And I just start crying. All of a sudden, I start hearing these voices. We'll help you over here. Like these tiny little voices. And I'm looking around, and I don't see anything. All I see is this grass and all these flowers and stuff. And they're like, we're right here. I said, I can't see you. You're scaring me. Don't stop. And they're like, and you hear them all whispering and kind of laughing, but then talking. And they're like, we'll help you get back home. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm scared, because I was raised Catholic and stuff. And I start praying. I go, I'm really scared because I can't see them, and I'm out here by myself. And all of a sudden this slit opens up, and these guides come out, and I recognize them for some reason. And I go through this slit, and they take me through this place. And next thing you know, they dropped me off at the other side. And they said, just walk to the corner here. And I said, I don't want to go. I want to be with you. It's like I'd always known them. And I believe they were guides. And this isn't the first time that I'd seen them. I'd seen them when I was even younger, a year and a half, which I talk about in one of my podcasts. And I had seen them in grade school when I was getting beat up and some other situations. But here they had like saved me or taking me through this distance very quickly, and a slit opened up kind of like a portal. And they said, here, walk through it. And I know this is crazy, people. And honestly, I don't care because I know what I experienced. And I walked out of it and I was crying and it closed up, and they had told me, okay, what'd they tell me? They told me just to walk the corner right here in the street. So I walked to the corner there, and there's some guy that was watering his lawn and saw me, and he raced over. And next thing you know, they found out who I was, and they called my dad, and he came pick me up. And I was only about maybe 12 houses away, but it was on a bend where I didn't recognize that part of the subdivision. So that was always in the back of my mind. I never knew what those voices were.
Yeah.
And it was until I listened to some of this audio, we're right here. Yeah. I'm a flower. Oh my God. I went back to, does that mean that when I was a little kid, they were speaking to me, but I couldn't see them? Well, I want to share one more thing that shows that obviously I had encounters with them as a child, but didn't know what they were. On my 40th birthday, my mom gave me this. It's one of the greatest presents I think I ever got, because I completely forgot about it. Didn't even know it existed, from so many years. But on my 40th birthday, she gave me this framed picture of a finger painting that I did when I was about 3 years old. And I vaguely remembered it when she gave it to me. I said, oh my God, I vaguely remember this. I drew outside our house in the front lawn where we had the trees, and I drew my little cat by the tree because we used to let our cats out, and there was a squirrel. And I drew all these little circular faces. Some were sad, some were happy, some were neutral. And I drew arrows with the circles, and the arrows was signifying them flying around the trees. And my mom said, what were these? I said, those were tree spirits. When I was a little kid, I said, these are tree spirits. She goes, do they come in the house? The ones you see in the house? No, they don't come in the house. She goes, are any of them bad? Oh, no, they don't like to talk about the bad ones. They're in the trees, and I hear them, but I don't see them. Some are happy, some are sad, some are playful. And that was it. Well, here is the actual
show painting. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Painting. And here it is here. And you see my name there, Chris, and you can see
fabulous.
one of the faces right there with the arrow.
Oh yeah. Yeah, looking quite a happy face, that one.
Yeah, so there was several of them, okay, that I had drawn in the drawing, and those were what I call the tree spirits. So it's like it comes full circle that now I'm in the UK and I'm getting on EVP and ITC that we're speaking to them, and I'm learning more about these particular elementals and entities. I realized, oh my God, I had an experience when I was a kid. So the question is why? I don't know. Why have an experience with them? Is it just because of my awareness, my perception with the psychic realm and the spirits? I don't know. But it's something I'm like, so you mean to tell me that not only is there the spirit world, there's a demonic realm, there's alien extraterrestrials and dimensional entities realms, but there's also a realm within our realm, which they go back into the ether outside our visual spectrum for protection, into the forest and outside where we can see them, the caves, the forests, etc. There's also this realm of elementals. Now, having done Help My House is Haunted and them following us, and then I started having experiences when I got back home, and I caught on my camera, my outdoor camera. I heard something, and I'm listening back to it, and I have the recording. You hear a voice go, "Hello, pixies," and then you hear them go. You hear these like bug-like sounds, like little bells, and then they go, "Who's this?" Right, and they say that in that frequency, and then they make this other sound, and that other sound was similar to what I captured on recording when we were in Calverton. And I realized, how can pixies be there and now they're here? Well, in studying, they obviously move different than we do, and they travel through the mycelium and they travel underground where there's no resistance. They flow right through it. So somehow they're related to the earth to where they can travel through underground very quickly through, I guess, the mycelium or whatever else of network there is through root systems and everything. So to me, it's just fascinating. And somehow, obviously, through telepathy or thought consciousness, they transfer thoughts from great distances to other versions of themselves and species to where they communicate. So for me, then doing Haunted Scotland, well, Spooked Scotland, Spooked Ireland, we came in contact with other forms of elementals. And I realized, you know what, there is no skepticism for me to this. They exist. And God only knows how many species there are. They had told me there was 43. There used to be thousands. And over periods of time, they've died down. And they told me there was 43 of them when we were at Alwi Cave, that there was 43 different species of them. So the question is, how many still exist? But they've stated that over a long period of time, a lot of them have died off. So anyway, that's a nutshell.
Yeah, there's loads in there
Right.
to unpack. I mean, my feeling is that I don't know. We don't know, do we? But could it be another dimension? Because there's so much info.
Well, here's the thing: is I believe I do know. I believe I do know, especially from what I had done in Ireland and the questions I asked.
Yes.
I would spend time listening, a lot of time listening to the audio, even knowing it was not going to make it in the show, because as a paranormal investigator and also a researcher, for me, the analysis is very important. Because not only I don't get everything, from being psychic, there's stuff that I miss and I don't understand. Yeah. And I was wrong a couple of times. I go, wait, is that a drop of water that I'm seeing, or is that something? Oh, I think it's just water. And they're like, no, it's us. They were trying to show themselves within the spectrum, and I wasn't quite. I was feeling something was there, but I wasn't seeing it, so I was discounting myself. And there it is on the audio. They're trying to tell me, but I would ask certain questions, and like I asked, when we were at Braddock Castle in Scotland, I had these impressions, and then I asked them, and they confirmed it. And they were saying, yeah, we were hunted down a long time ago. We were pushed back into the deep mountains and hills of the forest. And then we retreated. Then it wasn't enough. So then we learned to retreat into the visual spectrum, outside the spectrum to where you couldn't see us. So they could be standing next to a tree and you can't see them because they're outside our spectrum, right? You feel like you're being watched, but there they are. They're watching us, but we can't see them. So when you take a look at the ether is part of electromagnetic field. And when you look at the electromagnetic spectrum, okay, and you can pull that up on Google and you'll see the scientific values. Yeah. And it shows what we see in the visual spectrum, which is only 10%. They've learned to adjust their frequency to go outside that 10%, which is still within our realm, but we can't see them. They're outside us seeing with our own sight. So that's how they protect themselves.
Yeah. And so then when they do show themselves on our technology, which I personally feel is possible, is that because they're shifting their frequency into our visual spectrum, or is it something to do with our technology that's developing that's now?
Well, it's a combination of all these things. I mean, for example, I remember when I had come back from being in the UK, doing the Devon house, I'm going for a walk. I'm going to walk to Clubhouse to go work out. It's about a 20-minute walk. And it's beautiful. There's trees, forests, and there's like a pond, but then there's some of the homes and there's this wide sidewalk. And I'm walking middle of the day, and there's a couple behind me with their dog. And as I'm walking straight ahead, I see something very long and slender jump out of the grass on the left side, race across the sidewalk, and then jump into the grass and disappear as if it's jumping into water. And I see this with my own eyes, and it looked like it had a little hat on. It was very thin, it looked like the version of the elf on the shelf. Okay, I'm just going to tell you. Okay, as crazy as that sounds. And I see this, and my rational mind is going, what? I know what I saw, but how is that possible? I turn around to people behind, did you see that? And they go, see what? And I say, see the thing that race? Goes, no, you're in front of us, so we couldn't see. So I race over there, and I'm patting on the ground, like, where'd you go? Where'd you go? And they're walking by going, what the hell is this guy doing, right? And I'm patting the ground going, how did you disappear into this grass? Yeah. So it's like they have, very similar to the ghosts and spirits that can go through walls. They can change their frequency, their vibration, the particles, of the makeup of their physical form into a form that blends and flows and passes right through our organic world that is at a different frequency and vibration. So they're able to pass right through, which aliens are able to do too when they abstract people from their homes. They go right through the walls. They use some type of frequency that changes the makeup, the atomic makeup of the wall, to where the particles are no longer a solid foundation. And then the person's vibrating at a certain thing that it passes right through. So it's somehow that these species are able to do that, and they can go through. Now, I don't know if they can go through walls and stuff like that. Well, that's not true, because Barry and I did see something race out of the garden right through the wall. So
Mm.
they are able to pass through stuff if they want. How they do it, I can't answer that. But for me, it's fascinating because
Yes.
as an investigator, you have to look at that. You have to start asking the right questions to find out more information about how they do that, why they do that. And as an investigator, that's what I started doing in Haunted Scotland and Haunted Ireland. And we came in contact with pukas, banshees, egregore, if I'm saying that correctly, and some other type of species that I found is just fascinating to me.
It is fascinating, and in my sort of experience with fairies, when I saw a pixie out the corner of my eye with my mum. We were together, and my mum doesn't believe in any of these kinds of things, but we were together walking along, and then there was a log that was in this beautiful garden on Dartmoor. And we were walking past, and I saw this pixie sitting at the end of the log out the corner of my eye. And I said to my mum, "Oh, look, there's a pixie." And she said, "Oh, yeah, a pixie." I don't know how we both knew it was a pixie, but I said, "Did you see that?" And she said, "Yeah, I saw this little person on the end of the log." But that was really unusual because my mum wouldn't normally believe in that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's almost the way that I've seen them is like they can superimpose themselves in nature onto other forms.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, but also they use a form of camouflage too within the trees and the leaves, that just as other species do, changing their colors and whatnot. And what's interesting, I do want to state is, I've gotten to this point now where I've had so many different experiences in stuff reflecting back to my childhood and everything that, I'll read certain comments, after shows, episodes, and some of the criticism, I have to laugh. I'm like, there's no such thing as pigs. Oh my God, now Fleming's talking about him. He's talking about this. I said, I love it. I love it because they're so wrong, because they have not had an experience yet, that I know that I'm doing the right thing because I'm exposing the reality of these things existing, as well as other investigators. But I've come across several investigators, well-known investigators, that have had elemental experiences, but they're hesitant to talk about it because of the criticism.
Right.
For me, I don't care, okay? Yeah. Because, to a degree, some people get really nasty, and it's like, why are you getting so angry and so upset when you were not there? You didn't experience it. And plus, I've got data. I've got the recordings and audio of these things talking to us, okay? That's irrefutable. So for me, it's like, as a paranormal investigator, my job is to present to you not only the experience, but also whatever data I have to support that. And you're going to get angry because you don't believe. Well, I'm sorry you don't believe, but there's so many things that go on and exist, whether you believe it or not. So for me, it's like, it's fascinating because you're going into this, it's not uncharted territory. There's many people over the last, long periods of time that even the Rosicrucians, they knew they would go into a meditative state and they would communicate with these things. So you have various cultures and individuals over 1,000 years, hundreds of years, whatever it is, that have had experiences and encounters. They write about it even in the Bible. They talk about not talking to the spirits of the trees and not talking to the satyrs and this and that. They talk about all these different things in there, and you're like, what? And when you see it, you're like, holy cow. Well, because they knew that, they could trick you. They could lie to you. They could, you don't want to worship them because they're not gods. They're just other form of species that we think they're very powerful, this and that, because we can't see them and they're able to do miraculous things that we can't. And it's like, so they said, be careful of that because they can take you down a wrong path. So for me, it's fascinating, and it's untapped in the paranormal to where people haven't investigated it enough. And I think they need to, because it's there, but we have to be respectful too, because you can piss them off.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And that's what I've come across as well with another encounter I had with Pixie, who was upset that people were trashing this woodland that he was living in. And then I spoke to another person, an artist, and she'd had a similar encounter in the same woodland. So this is somebody I'd never met before. We both compared our experiences, and it sounded like we'd seen the same being. So who was very upset about how humans were treating this area of woodland. So, maybe that's why they come forward. Maybe that's why they make themselves visible. to
When
bring
I,
a message.
yeah, when I was in Calverton, we had done filming. It was late at night, and we'd been in the forest twice, but that was the final investigation. Everybody walked, and I felt it was incomplete. They felt they got what they needed. And I'm like, well, just leave me alone. They said, well, don't be too long. I said, I'm just going to spend maybe about 20 minutes, half hour in the forest by myself. And it's pitch dark and it's scary. And we had all these things happen that night. I said, but I need to pay some respect to the elementals and stuff, because I knew the pixies were there because they had popped up on the recorder. So I sat there and I closed my eyes and I had the recording going. So I have the whole recording of this. I just started calling out to them. I said, listen, I understand you guys are afraid of most humans, that most humans don't understand your realm. They're disrespectful. And then, they're destroying nature in the forest. They're destroying the environment. And you hear this saying, yes, guilty, where the elementals are saying, yes, guilty. So I started asking them, do gnomes exist? And they said, yes. And I said, do you get along with them? They said, not always, because they're kind of tricksters too, but they take stuff. And it says that the gnomes take stuff. They take stuff. Yeah. And then these pixies are saying, we're mad at you guys because you guys brought the imps here. What do you mean they brought the imps? Because, well, they're following you. So it looks like the imps were following us as well. And they had followed us into the forest, and the elementals were pissed off about that. I have a recording where you hear them get them, where you hear this little battle go on between the imps, spirits, and these elementals, because I was using this new technique with using Wi-Fi and shortwave radio to try to get into a certain frequency to communicate with elementals, because I had this vision, this dream several nights before. They were showing me how we can communicate with them in the trees. So I set up this quick experiment to do it, and it's not in the show, but the audio, in some ways, it's terrifying. And I sent it to Gary Galka, who created Spirit Box and everything, and I co-created the SB7 with him. I said, Gary, got to hear this. He's like, oh my God, it's like you stepped into another dimension. I said, yeah. You hear all these shrieking souls, you hear these elementals, and then you hear these other negatives that are attacking them. And it's like this spiritual battles going on between these various types of species and races. And for me, it was like, holy cow, I need to develop this further and work on this more. But I learned from that. That's the thing. I just don't go, hey, look, I got an EVP. No, I study it. What are they saying? What does this mean? And I learned from that. And every location I go, I'm not just looking for EVPs for the show. I'm looking to try to find out what can they teach me that I missed as a medium or that I wasn't getting. Yeah. And for me, I've learned so much, not everything, but I've learned a lot about these elementals and their realities and where they go and why they're here. And they hate man because man was terrified of them and tracked them down. And so they retreated into this different dimension outside our visual spectrum as a safe haven.
Yeah. And in folklore as well, there's accounts in this part of the world and in other parts of the world of different types of fairies going into battle.
Yeah.
There's stories from Dartmoor about the pixies and the goblins fighting. So it's like you're reaffirming these old stories through what you're discovering in a way.
Right.
And I think there's some, definitely element of truth in these old stories.
There is. Yeah. I mean, when we went to Broddick Castle, there's a history island of Iron, there's history of the Fae and stuff like that. And then we went to Mockery Moor, and at Mockery Moor, I saw this white, it was almost like a really yellowish pale baby that crawled up one of the stones, and I freaked out. Yeah. And I thought, was it a crew member that was behind? No, it went so high up. And then I saw something similar when I was at Lep Castle. And I'm like, what the hell is that? Because it falls outside what I've seen before. So I'm trying to place it. It's very similar to some type of goblin. Okay. Goblin creature, almost like the size of a baby. Okay. So I'd seen something similar twice to that. But when we were at Broddick Castle, there was stuff that we were getting in ITC regarding satires, that they're real. Elves, one says, I'm the king elf. I have this perfect recording of communication using ITC. I am the king elf of the Fae. And then talking about, pixies and some other stuff. None of that made it in the show because it's just so insane, So for me, it's a learning experience, and I catalog that and I keep that as part of my research. in identifying that here's the communications and here's what I know so far. But, you know, when you look at a lot of these myths and legends, there's so much truth to them that over time people forgot and they just think it's a, fiction or just a story. But people were recording and documenting and telling these stories based on their experiences, no different than we're doing now with homes that are haunted.
Yes, and what you were saying earlier as well about the gap opening and going through that. I mean, that's classic fairy-led folklore, isn't it? Where people go into this other realm or move at a different speed in time, in one place, one moment, and then in another place, the next sort of thing. Do you think that's what you were going through, the fairy realm, or was it?
No, I mean, it's the thing I've learned about consciousness, because I've done the gateway where I leave my body, I go places.
Yeah.
If people want to become familiar, just Google the gateway analysis on the CIA website. It works, and you can go in between time. The other thing was, after my car accident in 2009, I have the neck injury, which I'm going to be having surgery now. I just found out. It affected my sensory in my RAS system, which I'd always had, would tingle when I would experience ghosts, and it would go off and I would feel it. Very similar to sharks with electroperception and stuff like that. A lot of us have this ability. So for me, that's what I use to communicate with ghosts. After the car accident, it wasn't working. So I started learning more about higher consciousness, putting my state into a non-local communication where I go outside of my body. In doing that, not being restricted to the body, I was able to perceive greater things and things outside our normal understanding of our dimension. And that's with consciousness, because we know, well, most of us know, if you believe, we have a soul and we leave the body. So we're much greater than this physical body. Well, if that's the case, then our consciousness is connected to the collective, connected to the source. So when we put ourselves into that relaxed state, we can perceive things. Like if I walk into a house, like for example, brought a castle, I'll walk in there, I will expand my consciousness, not just to that corridor. I will close my eyes, or even I'll leave my eyes open and I'll stare. You see me, sometimes I stare a lot out into wherever I'm staring. What I'm doing then is I'm allowing my consciousness to expand like a balloon, like a radar system that goes through the entire building or the location. And then I get these little pings, like this movements. And when I get those movements, which is another form of consciousness that's not on the same frequency, it's thinking or moving, reacting to me, going into its environment, that when I see that change and that reaction, I know, okay, it's right over there. And then I will go that way to go investigate, which sometimes the crew hates, because we're starting here and now I'm leading them all through the entire place to go find it, and it's like, just follow me, because I know where they are,
Yes.
So for me, in doing that, it's also communicating with elementals. So if I go in the forest and I expand, I say, they're right here in this tree over here. You're right over here. Okay. You just jumped down into the ground, or you went behind the tree or through the tree. I said, I know you're here. And they're like, how does he know that? Right. He walks with angels, you'll hear them whispering when I play the recorders back. And I learn from their feedback, from them talking to each other, like, oh, that's what that means. Like we were at Alwi Cave, and I'm like, guys, I really want to learn how to see you naturally. And then they start saying they were describing my soul, because they would see my soul and they would see how it glows. And they said his soul is very amber. And then they told me that a sunstone, they said, get a sunstone. And I'm a sunstone. So I looked up a sunstone and I got one. I'm going to bring it with me when I go back to Scotland this week. Is they were saying that this stone will help you see us better. So I don't know how that's possible. I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to bring it with me when we're in Scotland and see if it works, because we're going to be going to Mockery Moor. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, stones and fairies and crystals. It's so powerful.
Well, here's the thing is, I have a question. When we're at Broughton Castle, do you guys like crystals? And a very clear voice goes, yes, we do. And I'm just like, oh my God, they like crystals. I don't know enough about crystals. I'm not into all that stuff. Okay, so forgive me. It's not part of my experience and research and utilization. But I'm realizing that there is something to some of these rocks, these stones that have certain properties, which I need to learn.
Well, some parts of the world, like where I live near, Dartmoor, is mostly, I think it's about 5 miles worth of granite, which is full of quartz. So it's like, walking, Dartmoor is like one big chunk of quartz that you're walking on top of.
Right.
So no wonder there's so much paranormal activity recorded in folklore, etc. But yeah, I've had that call from the pixie that I met in the woods, and he asked me to bring some malachite. So I ended up calling him Malachite.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I'm not a great crystal expert, but yeah, so me and my son took some crystal took some malachite to the woods for the pixie,
Oh, wow.
and we put it in this tree. And I took a photo of the tree. And at home, this was a few years ago. My son's quite tuned into these kinds of things, and he said, "Oh my gosh, that tree and the hole where we put the crystal looks like a face." And it was like
Oh, wow.
the malachite crystal into this eye of this tree face.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I always.
So what type of
that.
besides the pixies, what other experiences have you had with that? What type of elementals? Just pixies?
Mostly been pixies, but I have seen in other woodlands, again with my son, this being that was superimposed on it's like a tree stump, and he was healing this pine tree because
Oh,
all
wow.
pine trees there'd been like gales, and the trees have been blown over, and it's like he was healing the place. And me and my son were like, we felt there's a portal being opened up with the trees being ripped out of the ground.
Yeah.
And so he was healing that space. So he was like a guardian. And then when I've been drifting off to sleep, I remember saying, this is a few years ago, I've never seen like winged fairies.
Yeah, I haven't either. Yeah.
I was drifting off to sleep and I saw these little winged, just bright light winged beings flying around. It's just
my God.
quite a clear vision of them.
Wow.
So yeah, but this is about you.
No, but I'm just interested because
yeah.
And here's the thing. I have to say this. I grew up. I was an athlete. My dad played professional hockey, so I played baseball, football, soccer. Won championships. Blah blah blah. Right. And I could have maybe gone that path in my life, playing baseball, whatever. My dad wanted to play professional football, but I got hurt too much. So I've always had, and when you talk about certain things like this with certain guys that are athletes, they're like, oh my God, like this. And so I've always dealt with certain skepticism, but I just don't care because I know it's real. Like my dad trained me, son, if you believe something, you've experienced something, you stand your ground, just make sure you're right. And so I don't care about the adversity, this and that, because I know enough of having these experiences. But it's still difficult. And I can, and for the listeners out there, I mean, I can understand you listen to someone says they see this, they see that. Sometimes it may be so fantastical. And there are people that do make stuff up. There are people that will elaborate or exaggerate, this and that. But then there's a majority of people that do have these extraordinary experiences. And the question is what can we learn from it? And that's what I'm still figuring out. What can I contribute? What can I learn and then pass that on? The only thing, like I've already shared with you, is when we talk about the different types of beings. I shared with you when I was 5 years old, I heard the voices. I didn't see anything, so I don't know what they were. Okay, I just thought they were spirits in the trees and in the grass and the flowers. The pixie. Okay. Pixie is not the first elemental I saw. I now realize that the imps are part of the elemental realm, and some of the elementals have told me that not all imps are bad. These little goblins, these little gargoyles, trolls, there are dark imps, and I didn't know that. But we've gotten EVPs in several locations saying, I go, what's here? They're imps? This is no, dark imps. And I'm like, dark imps? Oh my God, now we're going into Star Wars, the dark side. It's like, you mean to tell me that there's a difference between imps, that they're not all bad, that there are some that are, and they said, no, there are some that are really evil. They're bad, but they're some really evil. Those are the dark imps. Those are the ones that are attached to the demonic realm and this and that. And they serve a higher, Lord. And I'm like, oh my God. Okay. So I'm learning, right? So seen dark imps, seen imps. Okay. Saw the pixie. All right. Now I grew up seeing imps and stuff like that coming through the walls and stuff as a kid. All right. I dealt with this, but this was because of the Ouija board. They come through during seances and certain rituals. So those I was always familiar with. So we got the imps, we've got the pixie. Then when we were filming Curse of Lizzie Borden, we went to this forest where there were stories of pukwudgies and everything. They never used that part. You see us in the forest, but they focus on the spirits, not the elementals. While we were out there, I'm with Sam Baltrusa standing next to me, and I call out, there's any elementals here? Will you show yourself, pukwudgies? And all of a sudden I see this light start flying around and leaving sparkles. Now, I've seen enough lightning bugs to know. Plus, please understand, it was 7 degrees out, almost zero. It was freezing. And this was I think it was in January we filmed this. So you see this thing fly around that look just like out of Disney, Tinkerbell. It's the only thing I can equate it to. And I see this going, what the? I know from my psychic abilities that I just came in contact with another life form that is an elemental. Yeah. But what is it? And then Sam goes, oh, that's a will-o-wisp. I go, will-o-wisp? So I had to look up will-o-wisp, which is basically a sprite. For those that don't know, the fictional character in Disney of Tinkerbell is a sprite. So if you look it up and you see it's sprite, and that's very similar to what I saw. And I'm like, oh my God, Tinkerbell's real. I'm like, oh my God, come on. And well, Tinkerbell's not real, but this from what that character was based on is based on these sprites. So I took out my digital recorder and I said, are there elementals here? Yes. What's here? And it said sprites, and it's clear as day. It's a woman saying it on the recorder. So I have that data to support not only the visual experience I had, but I now have the audio to back it up that came from that realm. So I realized, okay, now I've seen a sprite. Well, the other thing that gets even crazier, okay, is I remember when I was in Calverton, they talked about gnomes. Well, I'd never seen a gnome at the time, but I remember I was in my house. I was in the bathroom. I had the door open because my cats will come in, and Dave Schrader calls me, and we're talking on the phone about something. And all of a sudden, in the corner of my eye, I feel something staring at me. I turn and look, and there is about a foot tall little man with a beard with a red hat, but the red hat's not pointed up. It's down. Okay. And he's got this blue clothing on with this big bushy gray white beard. Looks up at me and I scream. I'm freaked out. Okay. Not because I'm in the bathroom and I'm getting embarrassed. I'm freaked out because what I'm just seeing should not exist. It should just be a myth or a legend. And I scream, and Dave's like, what's wrong? I said, I just saw, you're not going to believe what I saw. And I told him, he starts laughing. I said, Dave, I swear I just saw this. And I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. How in my house? What's going on? Right. Well, later that week, I went to go visit my mom that lives out in the countryside. And I was telling her about what I saw. She's like, really? Because we've always had experiences growing up and we share our stories. She goes, well, I wonder if I have them here. I go, Mom, I don't know. I'm not familiar with them. I don't know what the heck what they do, this and that. I've had other experiences with elementals. So she takes her electric wheelchair, goes down the hall on the other side of the house. And as she's coming back, she starts screaming, Chris, knock it off. And I'm like, what? And I'm on my laptop in the den. I go, what are you talking about? She's like, that's not funny. I go, what's not funny? And she comes and realizes I'm sitting on the floor. Wait a minute, you weren't playing a trick on me? She was like, no. I said, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I go, what? She goes, going down the hallway. And all of a sudden I hear this, hut, 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 hut. And I'm like, what? She goes, I swear. She was like, oh my God, and that wasn't you. I go, no. I said, I start laughing, going, oh my God. What does that sound like? That sounds like something from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. The dwarfs are going like, hi ho, it's off to work. But they're going, hut, 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 hut. Like they're like telling my mom, hurry up, let's go. Come on, let's go. Right. And I'm sitting there going, oh my God, they just made their presence known to my mom. I said, Mom, this is just so crazy. I go, Mom, you swear? She was like, I swear. And I'm like, you just asked. I wonder if I have them. So they made themselves known. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, this is a lot to process. Well, when I went on a special little event I did with Barry Guy when I was filming, I think I was filming Spook Scotland. So I had a few days off. So I flew to Birmingham. Barry picked me up and we went and did an event that night, which was amazing at the Smith Walk bathhouse, right? So I had an ITC device and I was trying to remember which one I was using. It might have been the Necrophonic or it might have been the Sono X10 Spirit Box app. Yeah, that's what it was. And I had that on. And Adrian Musto, who is the director of photography of Help My House is Haunted, showed up because he's a friend of mine. He's an amazing artist. He showed up to surprise me. So he's standing right in front of me. And all of a sudden the device says, I go, is there any elementals here? Are there imps here? Whatever, anything here? They said, no, gnomes. I go, gnomes? Come on. So we got 25 people and people caught this on their camera. So people were filming. So please understand. Yeah. And I got this on audio. Okay. I said, gnomes? They go, yes. Okay, what are gnomes doing here? I'm like, come on. So I'm like, kind of like, yeah, right. Okay, sure, right. So I ask a question. I go, well, I got a question for you guys. Does it bother you that someone puts a little statue, these plaster or solid statues of gnomes on their yard? Yeah. And they said, yes. And they goes, it's racist. Racist. And then we heard it and we all started laughing. Racist? So they don't like the statues. They think it's racist, right? So then we start laughing, and then you hear them saying, oh, sure, make fun of us in front of people, right? And it's in like that kind of a voice. And I didn't hear that at the time we were investigating until we played it back later. And they're like, they were upset that we were laughing at them and this. And I go, oh my God, I didn't mean to disrespect you. It's like, please understand, it's not every... I just don't believe in Smurfs. Okay. Sorry. But I mean, I know I saw the one in my doorway and this and that, but now that I'm talking to you, this is just so fantastical, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, how is this possible? 25 people witnessed it. Adrian Musto, director of photography, witnessed it. We have it not only on cameras that were caught on cell phones that were filming at the time, but I have it on audio. And if you guys go to my podcast, Spirit Talk, and you look for the Gnomes episode with Kate Ray, I play some of that audio. It's on there. So you can come to your own conclusion. So what I'm telling you is that because of this data and my personal experience, and when I was in Calverton and the Pixies told me they exist, they exist. So, but here's the thing. I started doing research on that, and it goes back for a long period of time. And you look at certain cultures where they talk about these little people, and they were at some point scientifically, they were called certain species, and various cultures talk about these people. But for those of you that don't know, there was this Indian guy that passed away a couple decades ago. There's photographs of him and everything. He was only like, 21 inches tall?
Oh, yes.
And he's one of the shortest man in record. And there are, records of human beings that are that short, okay, and almost that short. So it's not impossible. All right. And if you believe in ghosts, demons, aliens, and now we know aliens exist because our government's coming out and telling us, whistleblowers, they're called non-human biologicals. And there's many different types of species. So if they exist, you're going to have to open up your door of your consciousness and realize that elementals exist too, that we are not the only ones. And I'm sure within time that will come out once we start learning more about these different types of biological species, non-human biologicals. So for me, it's like, wow, here we go. We're going to start finding out about all these other categories of species, which is just part of science and understanding what's out there within in the multiverse now, within this multiverse. So for me, it's fascinating. The other thing is, I believe I've had to see some type of elves, because the one that raced across the sidewalk, and then one time when I was packing in my room, and this was shortly after the Devon experience, a shadow figure of about 2 feet tall, looked like an elf, raced across the room, and my cat responded to it and chased after it, but then went through the dresser, and my cat stopped, looked at me, and was like, where'd it go? I said, you saw that too. So pets can see these things too when they race across the room.
Yeah.
So, and then the other thing is at Broddick Castle, while I did not see the Pixies or the elves, we have conversation. This is one crazy thing that obviously didn't make it in the show, but we're shooting a general view where I just walk down this corridor, and the corridor is kind of red, and it's on Broddick Castle on the second floor. And you see it in the episode. You see me walk towards the camera very quickly in a couple seconds. While we were setting up the shot, the crew was on the opposite side, a great distance away from me because I had to walk towards them for this shot. I felt something, behind me. I turn around and I'm looking towards the ground because I look over my shoulder and I see these hooves on the floor, but they're semi-transparent. And I'm looking going, and I'm in a state of shock. I'm seeing these hooves, and as my eyes going upwards, I see these long legs, very similar to like a deer or elk legs. And then I see this torso that's all furry, and then it stops, and there's the belly button. There's these ripped abs. And I look up, and then I see this face very similar to like a horse face, a human face, but kind of horse face. and I see these black protruding bulbous horns on top of its head, where they're not sharp at the end, but they're bulbous.
Mm-hmm.
And I see these long ears, very similar to like a small deer or elk ears. And as I look at this thing, it opens up its eyes, realizing I can see it, and it quickly darts away. And I scream, and the crew goes, "What? What happened?" I said, "Oh my God!" And I'm trying to make sense logically of what I saw, and I'm trying to place. I go, "What is that? What is that mythological creature that plays the flute and stuff like that?" And they're like, "What?" I said, "No, like," they said, "Pan." I go, "Yes, it looked just like that."
Yeah.
They're like, they start laughing. I go, "No, I'm freaking serious. I'm freaking serious." And they go, "Well, you do know that on Island of Arran, there are stories about satyrs." And I go, "Get out of here." I said, "Can we investigate?" "No, Chris, we got to." I go, "We need to investigate this right now." And they're like, "No, we're shooting just a general review." So we didn't investigate it. Well, then I realized is later when we did do investigation, I'm not talking about this on the show. I'm sorry. I'm not going to talk about this because I know I'm going to get a lot of criticism, and I don't know enough about them to talk from any authority or understanding. I might sound like a fool, but I was asking further questions, and I have audio of them saying satire, this and that. I did research and saw that, oh my God, it's in the Bible. It's brought up in the Bible. And in other cultures talking about this species. And then I was just at the Art Institute a couple of weeks ago, and there's some statues from the Greek and Romans of satyrs, and which means, people say, "Oh, it's a myth and legends." No, they were sculpting what they were experiencing back then.
Yes.
And Brodda Castle and Island of Arran is known for them as well. They're freaking there. They're part of the ether as well as the other fae. They exist. And I'm like, here's another addition to an experience of an elemental that I've seen. And why am I seeing all these things? Maybe because my mind is so open up to it and I'm not a threat. And they realize that, hey, he sees ghosts, he sees angels, he sees demons, he sees us. We can also see him. I do not fully know why I'm able to see and have all these experiences, but I'm telling you. And there's other people in the world, some that have come forward and some afraid to come forward. I'm not afraid to come forward. Because here it is, you go investigate it yourself. You go try to have an experience. You go do the research. Because I'm throwing this out there saying, hey, this is what happened.
Yeah. And it's by opening up and saying what we've seen, because I'm the same. I don't really, I'm 50. I've got to the age where I don't really care what people think, to be honest.
Yeah, it's like, I've got to talk about this. If I don't, and I die, it gets buried with me,
Yeah, exactly. And gosh, there was something I thought about asking you just now, and it's gone right out of my head. But it was
I know you had a bunch of questions too.
Yeah, well, it was about the gnomes and about capturing EVPs, because when I've been talking to people on this podcast, I've captured EVPs. And my last guest that I had, Jeremy Garner, whose episode I just released recently, we were talking about the Woollerton gnomes. Have you heard of that case?
Oh, of course, absolutely. I'm very familiar with it. Kate and I have been talking about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So he'd created a video about the Woollerton gnomes, and we were just talking about them. And then he watched the video back, I'd watched it back, and there's an orb that goes by him, and he sort of jokes, says, "Oh, I think that," because I said to him when I was talking to him, "Oh, there's an orb that's just gone by you." He said, "Oh, it's probably just dust." So then listening back, this orb goes by, and I think it's just before or just after, there's a beep, beep. It's like something is saying beep, beep, as if to say, like the little cars, because we were talking about the little cars.
Yeah, the horns on the cars. Yep, absolutely. Yeah. I get it. Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing. I mean, it's, obviously with the children seeing these like 30 elves or whatever they saw, it seems fantastical. But in the same sense, what I've learned in the paranormal field, based on certain encounters I've had in my childhood and growing up, that they will sometimes show themselves based on what's in your consciousness that either will be considered threatening or non-threatening and acceptable, very playful, such as we know the dark imps and these other entities will try to find out what your fear is. So they will manifest or create fear, like whether it's snakes, spiders, whatever, make you think of something that causes an emotional response of fight or flight. But then you have other beings that will present themselves in a comical or funny or comfortable way to let them know that that they're non-threatening. And that's just the thing. They're able to read our thoughts, know what's in our thoughts, so that they can present themselves in a non-threatening way. It's no different than in big business meetings, you get to know the person you're going to be meeting so that you can build rapport with them and respect them and build a friendship or a business relationship with. And it's like, even in sports, you get to know each team member, what they like, how they are, their talents and abilities, and then you apply them within the team to utilize those abilities. Okay. So I believe that out of respect, they try to figure out what we're like and present themselves that way.
Yeah. So they're presenting themselves in a familiar form.
Yeah. And the thing is in that research is, if you look at, there was a Disney movie that came out called The Gnome Mobile, and that came out, I believe, in the late 60s. So the question is, had any of those kids seen that movie when they were a kid, and that was in their consciousness or subconsciousness of the Gnome Mobile? Okay. And in the Disney film, we're in the Gnome, they got the song, we're in the Gnome Mobile, the Gnome Mobile, the Gnome Mobile, and it's a Disney film, right? Was that in one of the kids' consciousness that the gnomes, when they saw them in the forest, like, who are these kids? What are they doing? And like, do they know that we're here? And then boom, it pops up. Yeah, they've seen a movie called The Gnome Mobile, which is a Disney flick, this and that. So maybe we present ourselves to them in these mobiles. That's what I think it is. Okay. And understand, I mean, I study psychology. I'm an artist, so I can look at, there are details and specific things. And that's what I do as a paranormal investigator. I look at these specific details. And being a counselor 17 plus years in my private practice, is I pay attention to these details. And so we do know from especially alien abductions, studying them, having experiences, is they look for certain things about you so that you're more comfortable with them. So they recognize an experience you had or what you like, and they present themselves in that way so that you don't feel that they're as threatening, to make things a little bit easier. Note if you go to a doctor and when you're a little kid and the doctor gives you a sucker or whatever else to calm you down, like everything's gonna be okay. And then you get the shot with the needle, like, oh, you jerk, but he was trying to, cheer you up before he does that. So I think that some of these beings will do the same thing. They'll find out what's in your head. So no one's really asked the question, or maybe they have, why did these gnomes appear to them in these mobiles? As fantastical as that sounds, if this story is true, then I believe the gnomes knew that one of those kids had seen this movie, pulled that from their subconscious, and then they presented themselves that way to be playful.
Yeah. And thinking that the children would receive it in a playful way, but in fact, they found it, as you would, quite scary, terrifying.
Well, yeah, the majority of them, they thought it was scary, but some of them, because I listened to the interviews, is that they stated that, well, we were scared at first, but we don't think they were that threatening or scary now that we look back on it. We just all kind of overreacted because they were in these cars, going around honking the horns and laughing and stuff. So they didn't seem that threatening. It's like they wanted to play chase and stuff like that. We play tag or whatever, hide and seek and all those things.
Yeah, because there is this mischievous element to them.
Correct.
They're known as tricksters.
Yep.
And I mean, my sort of take on things, I don't know what sort of conclusion you've come to as well, is that I feel that, because I wasn't really in touch with this realm as a child. It's a later thing that I came into contact with in my late teens, when I'd left school, and into my 20s. And I feel that maybe that they came to me, or I started to have these experiences, because it was a recognition of, oh, this person perhaps needs a bit more joy in their life, or that element of that element of fun. And I
possibly, yeah, try to cheer them up, stuff like that.
Yeah, because
we do know a couple of the kids have gone down a dark path in their life as they got older, which has been uncovered, which we're not going to talk about too much. But the question is, why? Did it have anything to do with this? Was there some other type of entity? Because I've had different theories. I'm like, okay, were they shapeshifters they saw pretending to be gnomes? Did they make the story up? Was it an alien abduction and they were abducted and they put in this false memory of gnomes because there's stories of gnomes in the Wilton Park, so there's various different scenarios, not just the actual fact of them seeing this. Is I tend to look, okay, what are all the possibilities here? And I lay out all the possibilities and then, try to figure out which one of these things can it be? What is the data showing us? For me, it would be just going there and trying to communicate with them and seeing if I come in contact with them through ITC as well as my own mediumship. but I've not been there yet. The interesting thing was when we were in Nottingham and before we went to Calverton, because we filmed 2 episodes within that area, someone had brought up, there's stories about gnomes in the park, and we were near the park. We were staying, but didn't really have the time to go out there. But they're saying, also Robin Hood and Robin Forest or whatever, Sherwood Forest,
Mm-hmm.
and that there's these gnomes in the park and stuff. And I didn't know much about the Wilton case at the time because this was 2019. But it needs to be pursued.
Fascinating. So come up to about an hour. I've been talking for just
Wow.
an hour. You're right. So I just wanted to, is there anything else you'd like to share, Chris, with everyone?
Yeah, I guess for me, it's a fascinating subject. It's just another realm of the paranormal that we don't know a lot about.
Yeah.
And some investigators, they don't believe it, so they don't pursue it, which is fine because there's the rest of us that do. I try to stay grounded in understanding this, but when you have these type of experiences, the proof is in the encounter as well as the data that's collected.
Yeah.
Because of these experiences, I mean, as an artist, I will draw what I see. Like, for example,
Yeah. You share some of
this
your
is the imp this is the one that appeared at the edge of the bed after we were at the Dolphin.
Yeah.
And very similar to what was caught on their camera in the episode, but you can see it came out of this black portal, which it shot back into, and you can see the texture of its skin was very toad-like. So for me, it's like this species is obviously indicative of some type of amphibious reptilian, based on what I saw it look like. And I tried to capture that in the drawing I did. But also because of these experiences and being an artist, there are creative things that I see visually that are not based on the reality of what I saw, that I will do some type of artwork because I'm inspired by the experience I've had or things that I've heard.
Yes.
So I liked blacklight posters. I did one of a fairy. Now I've never seen an elemental like this, but I decided to use blacklight colors and create a kind of neon, beautiful little piece of art of a fairy in the forest with the butterfly.
That's amazing. How have you created that one, Chris?
No, I do it all digital. I'll use Procreate. Like there's varying things that I do because I try various mediums. Like I will draw watercolor, I'll paint, sketch out, and then I'll use digital. I'll use Procreate where I will scan in a sketch that I do, and then I'll do it there, or I'll draw it in there. Also, I will use AI. I will sometimes use AI. It doesn't always come out the way I want. I'll bring it into Procreate. I'll make adjustments to it. I'll add colors to it. I'll take stuff out or combine 2 different images. Sometimes go into Photoshop to do stuff as well. So I use various forms of digital media along with hand-drawn media to create these images. Like, for example, I could create something in AI. I don't like it. I go in there and I draw all these other details on it. I'll draw the eyes. I'll draw more hair. I'll draw, something else in the background. I'll take it further than what it is. So for me, the quicker I can create something and capture what is in my head or what I feel is interesting from an artistic standpoint, I'll do. In the early stages, I mean, like, in high school, I used to just draw AC/DC. I mean, this is my sophomore year in high school. I'm drawing Angus Young on a statue, and this is all pencil,
Yeah.
So
that's amazing.
I've changed in what I draw based on what's going on in my life. And here's a nice, colorful of 2 fairies in a field with flowers. And for me, I was inspired obviously by Monet. I don't really like Monet paintings too much, except I love the pastel colors. So I wanted to take some of those pastel colors as well as vibrancy, but create something in the fairy realm.
Wow. Do you sell these or are these?
Yeah, I sell prints, and this is a banshee. When we were in Scotland and then Ireland, I created, and you can see some other elemental forms that are here as well, but this is a banshee.
Wow. So you had an experience with a banshee, or is that
we came in contact, at the Banshee pub, we had some spirits say banshee. We also went when we were in Ireland to track down this banshee. I did not see it, but we did have some spirits talking about it and their stories about it. And then this, obviously, using some of the palette, like with Monet and Impressionist. I like the Impressionist period, and I also like the Romanticism period of art. So what I do is I take some of these elementals and spiritual things with angels and demons and stuff, and even like the Knight Templars and I create certain artwork. But for me, this is just the color spectrum is what I try to capture. So there's a lot of color correcting that goes in.
That is beautiful. Yeah.
And then this is more of an impressionist piece. This is like the fairy realm of all different elementals kind of blending into like an impressionist amorphic piece of work.
Oh, look at that. That is gorgeous. Yeah,
right?
love that.
And then this is one of the earlier ones I did when we were in Scotland. These are the fairies of Broddick Castle, which
Wow.
you see that there. And when you see them moving around, all that shadow and the black masses and stuff, that's just me showing how they manifest and transform coming into our realm from the ether. So for me, as an artist, that's representing them traveling in and out of our dimension of visual perspective, and how they can be very amorphic and they can change very quickly.
That's incredible. I'm really interested in that description. Can you describe how these beings appear?
Yeah, like when I saw the pixie on the couch, I didn't see anything there, but we heard it. And the cameraman's like this going, he knows there's something on the couch. We heard it. So I said, just film it. He goes, nothing's showing. Nothing. I go, show yourself. Please show yourself. And all of a sudden I see this like mist as if it's starting to form like a ghost or a manifestation. And then all of a sudden the mist kind of goes away because it's going like this. And you see this creature, this brownish red creature that's like half insect, half troll that's on this. And I'm like, I see you. And I'm trying to remember. And then when we're done with the investigation, I go back to the hotel room. And then that night, like, 3 a.m, I'm sitting there quickly sketching, which you saw earlier with this image,
Yeah.
And then what I did is I've taken this image and I brought it into Procreate and I brought it into AI and I had it make it even detail even further, which I think it's on my Instagram, which is Chris Fleming Artwork. I may have posted it on there so you can see what I did. Obviously the hand drawing, and then you can see what the AI also took that further, which is really interesting because actually the AI version looks more of what it looked like than this does. And I'm like, how did it do that? It's like pretty wild.
I'd love to. What do you use? Because obviously I'm an artist too. And
this is just simply pencil. It's ebony pencil. Okay. Yeah. And then I take like a black marker. I've got a couple different markers that are different degrees of thickness. I will go in there after the pencil sketch and I will outline it, add some more details. And then I will go in, as you see here, there's the pencil, which I'll blend in. Okay. And then I go in with watercolor and I'll go in there with watercolor. Now I use a lot more digital too, because it's easier to make certain types of textures with Procreate and the Apple Pencil, and also more vibrancy in the colors than you can in just on pieces of paper. Plus it's a lot cleaner and I can do layers and I can make adjustments. Like if I mess this up, it's messed up. Right. But in digital and Procreate, you can delete that and start over, which is great.
Did I send you my image of the pixie that I saw?
I don't think so. I mean, I see a piece of artwork behind you, like a little painting or something up there with.
Oh yeah, this is some of my other stuff. This is just fun, sort of doodly sort of stuff I draw.
Oh, that's very colorful. Yeah.
It's called Hirameki. So I start with a colorful background and then I draw what I see.
That's very cool.
It's a Japanese technique called Hirameki, or spark of inspiration.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then got here. So this was the first version I did of the pixie that I saw.
Oh my God, is that cool? Look at how similar that looks.
Yeah.
Look at how similar that looks. Oh my God.
The nose and the bushy back,
Yes.
So this was
I'll be darned.
2016. Yeah, because I took photos of this place.
That is so similar.
Yeah, I know. And I could see all these other little beings. I mean, you might say that they're like imps or something. These dog-like little creatures.
Yeah.
Faces and things. Yeah, so that was.
I am blown away how similar that looks.
So I took some photos and I showed them on a Facebook group that I belonged to at the time. And someone said, oh, there's a little person in the tree above the stone. was like, really? And I zoomed in, and that's what I could see.
Incredible.
And then, so I don't see it at the time, but I can't find it.
That is so. Yeah, because I knew I drew the nose too big, and then he even made the comment, "It's my nose is too big," but everything else is so similar to what you drew.
This is the sort of nicer, I call it the nicer version, if you like, because that one I thought was quite scary. So that's.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Look at that.
The colour.
That is simply amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they look like.
Trees and things. Yeah. But I think the first
And that was all watercolor?
That's watercolor, yeah.
Yeah.
And
yeah, that's beautiful.
So yeah.
Holy
Well, that's
cow.
what struck me, seeing your picture, how similar.
Yep.
Were. And then there's this other artist I spoke to, and she showed me her picture of what she saw. And I'm like, oh my God, that's like the same.
Yeah, I think it's important, obviously, as an artist, but also in telling a story of what you experienced, that there's some type of visual. I mean, you can describe it as much as you want, but it's important for that person, whether they have artistic talent or not, doesn't matter. Just draw out the best you can what you saw, so that people got some type of image with your story to put it to. And I've always felt that, you know?
Yeah. Have you ever seen beings with glowing eyes, like faeries with, is that something with this being?
I haven't seen, no elementals. I mean, I've seen other entities. When we were at a particular castle during the filming of Spooked Ireland, I woke up and there was a cloaked figure in the corner of the room, and its eyes were glowing red. And it was saying, help. It was asking for help. It was a soul that was trapped there. And then when I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico in 2006, doing some controlled remote viewing training with Lynn Buchanan, we walked, he's like in the middle of the desert. And we walk out and I saw this reptilian creature that was probably about 7 feet tall. Pamela Heath was with me, and it was standing behind this tree. And I'm like, what the hell is that? Because I just saw these red glowing eyes, but I saw the outline of it from the moonlight. And I'm like, I was afraid to move because it was watching us, and it turned, and as it turned, it became semi-transparent and just vanished into the moonlight. I'm like, that was a reptilian. It was like 7 feet tall. I was like, what the hell is that doing here while we are going through this training? So, it is what it is. There's the mystery there. But those are the two that I've seen with the glowing eyes.
Oh, wow. Gosh, it's just fascinating what you shared. Thank you, Chris.
No, you're welcome.
I really
thanks
appreciate
for having me.
Yeah. So what's coming up for you, and where can people find you and connect with what you're doing? So I know you're a really busy person.
Yeah, I'm leaving this Saturday to go to Scotland for a tour with Go Scotland Tours. So we've got 21 people. We're going to be going to a lot of the locations we did on Spook Scotland, plus we're going to Loch Ness. I do a lot of paranormal access events in Chicagoland area, Illinois area, where we investigate certain haunted places, which is a lot of fun. I do that, Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. I have my counseling. I have my private practice where I do spiritual counseling for people, where there's mediumship involved, there's self-help, there's, dealing with grieving, bereavement, paranormal stuff that people have, attachments, those types of things. I've been doing that 17 years. And then obviously as an artist, I like to create art, and I sell artwork. I'm actually working on a documentary right now regarding something. I don't want to talk about it yet, because until if it gets green lit and becomes a show, you'll hear about it. But until then, it's still just being developed. And that's pretty much it. Going into 2024, I want to focus more on my art. I have a concept, an idea, project that has nothing to do with the paranormal, and starting a company that if I decide to do, it's just that there's so much I'm doing already that I'm going to have to let some things go. So it depends upon what happens in the next 6 months, if I'm going to go that route. If I do, I'm going to be dedicating all my time to that, because it's a project I'd like to see happen, a business that I want to start. So we'll see.
Fabulous. And where's the best place for people to contact you, on your Instagram or?
Yeah, they can go to my Instagram, which is Chris Fleming Official. Also, my
Mhm.
Twitter. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be at Twitter. Twitter's just becoming a cesspool of
Yeah,
political
don't you really need to?
propaganda and hate.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous.
Mm.
But I'm Chris Fleming Official on
Yeah.
Instagram and Facebook, Chris Fleming 91 on Twitter, which is now called X. And then Chris Fleming Artwork is on Instagram. So you can see all the various pieces I've done. I'm going to have a sale, obviously, during Black Friday in November on the pieces. And then also, I'm going to do what's called an orange sale, where you can pick any one of the pieces of artwork on my Instagram, and I will make a print of it, if possible. I mean, some stuff I'm not going to be able to do because it's not digital, but I will make prints for that person that wants that particular one. So it'll be on like a commission basis where you say, hey, I want this. Here's the size that I'm going to choose, how much it's going to cost. And I'll let you know what it costs to have that printed out, because I've got to do all the color correcting, everything, send it to the printer, and then, package it and sign it and do all those different things to get it to you.
Work,
so I'm going to do that in October. There's going to be like an orange sale where you can pick a piece, orange sale, pick a orange of which one you want, and then I'll have it made for you and ship it to you.
Brilliant. Oh, wow.
Thank you.
That sounds exciting. I'm going to have a look.
Oh, thank you.
I like, yeah. Thank you ever so much, Chris. It's been brilliant speaking to you. Thank you for your time, and wishing you well with your trip to Scotland and everything else ahead of you.
Thank you.
I'll say goodbye now.
All right. Thanks, Claire. I appreciate it. And to all listeners, thank you for joining us in this interview. I appreciate it.
Thank you to Chris for being a great guest. I absolutely loved this share. Remember to check out and follow Chris's art account on Instagram at Chris Fleming Artist. We were so amazed by the similarity in our depictions of the pixies that we both experienced on separate occasions. You can see my pixie art on my Instagram at Fairy Whisperer or at Fairy Whisperer Art. I appreciated Chris sharing his insight into how the elementals travel from place to place through the mycelium and tree roots. This feels true for me too, that they would connect and travel in this way, especially as it connects with my sighting of the elf that I saw healing a tree, and my feeling that they tap into this network to heal and work with trees and other plants. I felt inspired by Chris's passion to push the boundaries in the paranormal by speaking openly about his experiences with these elemental beings, and in turn being an advocate for their existence. I feel strongly too that it's time to open the doorways of our consciousness a little more, to accept that we share our earthly home and the wider universe with other beings, and that our choices and actions impact upon them. Look around you at the UFO disclosures that are happening, with non-human biological entities being officially acknowledged by our governments, something we could not have imagined even 5 years ago. More and more people are stepping forwards with their accounts of interactions with beings from the elemental realm, which I include under the umbrella of fairy. In this time when the earth needs our love and care more than ever, can we hold out a friendly hand and shake a gentle hello to those who are here to remind us to walk our path with an open heart and be the change that we are seeking. Thank you for listening, and see you next time.